Good afternoon and welcome, very welcome to the 2017 Nobel Prize ceremony in Stockholm, Sweden. And you're not alone watching. Several million people around the globe are tuning in now to follow this special moment. It's of course a celebration of scientists and the author that will soon enter the stage, but more than that, it's a celebration of science itself, as was the wish of Alfred Nobel, the Swedish inventor that founded the prize through his will before dying 1896. 1901 was the first Nobel Prize to be handed out, and ever since it is a tradition on this day, the 10th of December, the anniversary of Alfred Nobel's death. And the ceremony is held here in the Concert Hall of Stockholm. Afterwards, time for the big banquet, which ends with dance and party. For some laureates all night long, but first they have to receive the prize. It will be delivered from the hands of His Majesty the King of Sweden, King Carl Gustaf. He, together with parts of his family, will take place to the right on the stage here in the golden chairs that we see. And to the left, in the red chairs, we will have this year's laureates. At the center of it all, in the background, we see the portrait bust of Alfred Nobel. There will be presentation speeches about the year's prizes before an audience of nearly 1,600 guests that are gathered here this afternoon. Each laureate has the right to an official party of 14 members of family and friends. The rest of the people in the audience are people related to the world of science, representatives of the prize-awarding institutions, members of the Swedish government and parliament, and the diplomatic corps. And we are awaiting the royal family and the Nobel laureates to arrive to the tune of the Swedish royal anthem. We also have a number of previous laureates present in the audience. They, amongst other designated scientific figures, are the ones allowed to nominate new laureates. Perhaps some of their favorites are the ones about to enter the stage. The chairman of the board of the Nobel Foundation, Professor Carl-Henrik Kjeldin, will hold an opening address, and the ceremony will be framed by brief musical interludes performed by the Stockholm Philharmonic Orchestra. The audience is standing up in honor of the royal family entering soon, and of course the Nobel laureates. And perhaps one might say in honor of this celebration of science itself, which is truly at the heart of the Nobel Prize. Now that almost all of the royal family has entered, it's time for the Swedish royal anthem to be played. Queen Sylvia in this lilac dress, King Carl Gustaf, Crown Princess Victoria and Prince Daniel. Crown Princess Victoria. And now speech by Professor Carl-Henrik Kjeldin, Chairman of the Board of the Nobel Foundation. So that was the second movement Alla Siciliana from Gaelic Symphony by Amy Beach. Soon we will hear the speech. Now entering this year's laureates. Everyone is standing up for them. Physics laureates Rainer Weiss, Barry Barish and Kip Thorne, followed by chemistry laureates Jacques Cousteau, Joachim Frank, Richard Henderson. Here we see literature laureate Kazuo Ishiguro. Rainer Weiss, together with Barry Barish and Kip Thorne. Jacques Cousteau. Now we're in chemistry. Joachim Frank. And the third chemistry laureate, Richard Henderson. Medicine or Physiology, this year's laureates on Jeffrey Hall, Michael Rosbach and Michael Young sitting next to him. We're getting a glimpse of his hands
Your
there.
Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel laureates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Nobel Foundation, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you to this year's Nobel Prize Award ceremony. In particular, I would like to wish the Nobel laureates and their families welcome to this ceremony. Earlier today, in Oslo, the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons, ICAN, was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for its work to draw attention to the catastrophic humanitarian consequences of any use of nuclear weapons, and for its groundbreaking efforts to achieve a treaty-based prohibition of such weapons. Today we are celebrating this year's Nobel laureates and their outstanding achievements in science, literature, and peace. We are also honoring the values the Nobel Prize stands for: enlightenment, humanism, and peaceful coexistence. Alfred Nobel dreamed of a better world. And in many ways, the world has become a better place since he wrote his will in the late 19th century. Thanks to scientific, cultural, and economic developments, more people have the opportunity to fulfill themselves and to live long and rich lives. Scientific achievements have not only made new technologies possible, they have also given us a deeper understanding how everything in our universe functions, from the stars to the cells in our bodies. Cultural advances have lessened the impact of prejudice and tradition. Economic growth has laid the groundwork for technological and social progress, as well as material wealth. We now have societies where people are able to live the lives they desire, to a degree the world has never seen before. However, today we are seeing accumulation of new threats against further possible positive developments. Science and the quest for knowledge are being questioned, even in parts of the world when they have been taken for granted. Facts, knowledge, and rational thinking are being challenged by alternative facts, untruthful statements, and irresponsible actions. Cross-border trade and cooperation are being resisted. Fundamental human rights are being ignored, one upsetting example being the treatment of the Rohingyas in Myanmar. All too many people are living under a constant threat of violence. The values expressed in Alfred Nobel's will are still relevant today. Humanistic values, critical thinking, the search for scientific facts and true knowledge must be the basis in our actions and decisions, both in our private lives and in politics and business. Alfred Nobel understood the power of good examples. In many ways, Nobel laureates become role models and sources of inspiration. In the spirit of Alfred Nobel, we should all stand up to the challenge of our times and try to bring about change. In times like these, schools are more important than ever. Some say that in the post-truth era, the focus should be on teaching pupils how to be critical about sources of information. This is important indeed. But in addition, young people need solid knowledge and high-quality education to be able to contribute to the progress and improvement of our society. They need to learn how to meet each other in discussion, to respect different views, and to find ways of jointly arriving at sensible conclusions. Being a teacher is an important task, one of the most important in our society today. Time after time, when Nobel laureates are asked about what have been the vital influences in their lives, their research, and their success, they recall a teacher who encouraged them to excel. We want to contribute on a small scale by strengthening the position of teachers and by promoting exchange between teachers from different cultures and different countries. For this purpose, we have launched a new forum this year, the Nobel Teacher Summit, and for the very first time, we brought this year's prize-awarded achievements to classrooms around the world by producing downloadable Nobel Prize lessons within 24 hours of the prize announcements. The fascinating stories of the now 923 Nobel laureates form the basis for our many outreach activities, which engage audiences in Stockholm, Oslo, and around the world. The planned Nobel Center in Stockholm will be a platform with education, knowledge, and critical thinking at its heart, where the major challenges of tomorrow will be discussed. Here, school pupils, university students, scientists, and visitors from all over the world will be inspired by the Nobel laureates and their accomplishments for the greatest benefits to mankind. I would like to conclude by quoting Nobel laureate Roger Kornberg. In a world beset by irrational influences, often with devastating consequences, the Nobel Prize call attention to the triumph of reason. Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel laureates, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Professor Carl-Henrik Gildin, Chairman of the Board of Nobel Foundation, said that. And here we see some of the nearly 1,600 guests here today. And now time to present the Nobel Prize in Physics. Soon it's time for that. But first, another musical interlude. This was a piece from the Gaelic Symphony by Amy Beach, who was the first successful American female composer of large-scale art music, premiered in 1896 in Boston, actually the same year as Alfred Nobel died. It was the first symphony composed and published by an American woman. And now, time for the Physics Prize. And a presentation speech by Professor Olga Bottner, member of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed laureates, ladies and gentlemen. Gravitation is the weakest force we know, yet it is the force that keeps our feet on the ground. It determines the orbit of the planet around us, our sun, and governs the violent encounters of black holes in the distant universe. The 2017 Nobel Prize in Physics honors a discovery that reflects this apparent discord between strength and weakness in a subtle way. The observation of an incredibly weak distortion of space due to a passing gravitational wave created in a momentous collision between two black holes in a faraway galaxy. About 1.3 billion years ago, at a time when the first multicellular life emerged on Earth, two black holes with masses close to 30 times that of our Sun entered the final stages of a deadly badudu. Whirling finally at half the speed of light, they collided and merged, an event which sent gravitational waves speeding through space and time, carrying information on what had just happened. Ever since then, the waves have traveled through the universe, sweeping through the Earth on September 14, 2015, when they were discovered by the newly commissioned twin detectors of the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, designed to notice the tiniest vibrations. This was the first time ever that a passing gravitational wave had been directly observed on Earth. This amazing observation represents the dawn of a new era, opening up new vistas for astronomy and bringing about new possibilities to study gravitation close to black holes, where it is at its strongest. Gravitational waves were predicted about 100 years ago in the framework of Einstein's general theory of relativity, which connects gravitation with the geometry of space-time. They arise as ripples in space-time whenever objects accelerate, traveling outward from the source as ever weaker waves. When gravitational waves reach the Earth, they stretch and squeeze space by the tiniest amount, far too small to be detected by human senses. Nevertheless, the team of scientists led by this year's Nobel laureate succeeded in overcoming the challenge, constructing detectors called laser interferometers, capable of measuring the microscopic distortions, billion of times smaller than the thickness of a strand of spider silk in the distance between two mirrors. These interferometers use laser light, split along two arms, each 4 kilometers long. Mirrors at each end reflect the light back to a point where the light beams are superimposed. The resulting light wave is channeled to a detector where a pattern of shadows is seen and registered. A passing gravitational wave stretches one of the arms and compresses the other, causing the pattern to shift minutely, which is what the scientists detected. To exclude local disturbances, like passing trucks or tiny earthquakes causing the instruments to vibrate, the observatory comprises two identical detectors on opposite sides of the American continent, separated by about 3,000 kilometers. On September the 14th at 9:50 Swedish time, both detectors registered almost identical signals from the passing wave, with less than 7 milliseconds delay. This not only confirmed the signal, but allowed localization of its source within an arc on the southern sky. The first direct observation of a gravitational wave is in more than one sense an earth-shaking discovery, a breakthrough which has been followed by additional significant observations. It opens unanticipated opportunities to explore hitherto invisible parts of the universe where, according to the renowned astronomer Carl Sagan, something incredible is waiting to be known.
Professor Weiss, Professor Barish, Professor Thorne, you have been awarded the 2017 Nobel Prize for Physics for your decisive contributions to the detector of the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory and for the observation of gravitational waves. On behalf of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, it's my honor and my great pleasure to convey to you our warmest congratulations. I now ask you to step forward to receive your Nobel Prizes from the hands of His Majesty the King.
First, Rainer Weiss, born in Germany, affiliated to MIT in the United States of America. Receiving the diploma and the medal from the hands of His Majesty the King. Happy family and friends. And so time for Barry Barish, also born in the United States, associated to Caltech in California. And Kip Thorne, also an American, who is affiliated with Caltech in the United States. From gravitational waves to chemistry. It's time for a presentation by Professor Peter Brzezinski, member of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences.
Eders Majestäter, Eders Kungliga
Your Majesties, Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel laureates, ladies and gentlemen. What lovely music we have been hearing flowing from the choir loft. In our ears, electrical signals are being generated, nerve cells are activated, and molecules causing pleasure are released and bound to their receptors. These molecules are conducted inside the cells, out of reach of our senses. Even so, these processes allow us to hear the music. A long-held dream would be fulfilled if we were able to dive into a cell and see the molecules. The world of molecules is the core of what we call life. But molecules are small. If we were able to enlarge your ear sensory organ to the size of this hall, hundreds of protein molecules would fit into each comma in the program you're holding in your hand. The Electron microscope allows us to see these molecules and even their components, the atoms. This instrument was first invented nearly 100 years ago. But it would take many decades before it could be used to study biological molecules, since they tended to dry up in the microscope's vacuum and be burned by the electrons used to visualize the samples. To examine biological samples in an electron microscope, they need to be frozen. Molecules in our cells, however, are surrounded by water that forms ice crystals when it freezes. These crystals are beautiful to look at, but electrons lose their way in the crystal labyrinth and the images come out black. Freezing water without forming ice crystals was thought to be impossible. Jacques Cousteau moved to Heidelberg to try to do just this. Out of pure curiosity, he wanted to do something that was considered impossible, something that even lacked practical applications. How would one write a grant proposal for such a project? Who would be willing to finance it? In the early 1980s, when Dubochet flash froze water at minus 200 degrees Celsius in cold ethane, he gazed at this impossible. The water was both liquid and solid at the same time. We call this state a glass. Dubochet had created, thus, a window into the world of molecules. At around the same time, Richard Henderson was studying a microorganism living in salt-saturated lakes in the desert. This organism has small, well-organized solar collectors made from protein molecules on its surface. In 1990, after having sought out the best electron microscopes in the world, Henderson was able to show the structure of these solar collectors at atomic resolution for the first time. In doing so, Henderson showed that the microscope could in principle provide detailed structures of the thousands of molecules found in our cells. But finding these molecules in microscope images can be compared to finding a shadow of a bird in the weak glow of the moon. Joachim Frank succeeded in developing methods that made it possible to find these faint molecular shadows. The challenge was then to determine how the molecules are positioned in relation to each other. After more than 10 years' work, Frank finally was able to present sharp, three-dimensional models created from thousands of these faint molecular shadows. In recent years, advances have come quickly. The scientific literature describes the progress as an ongoing revolution. Those of you in front rows need not be concerned, however. Within science, revolutions are international in nature. They come through collaboration between individuals, and the results confer benefit to mankind. Some say that it is a miracle that we now, thanks to the contributions of the laureates, can look into ourselves, thereby tricking our senses. But to quote a famous chemist, miracles sometimes occur, but one has to work terribly hard for them.
Jacques Cousteau, Joachim Frank, and Richard Henderson. Your work has led to the development of cryo-electron microscopy for the high-resolution structure determination of biomolecules in solution. That is a truly great achievement, a truly great achievement. On behalf of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, I wish to convey to you our warmest congratulations. May I now ask you to step forward and receive your Nobel Prizes from the hands of His Majesty the King.
First out is Jacques Dubochet, born in Switzerland at the University of Lausanne. Shaking hands with King Carl Gustaf of Sweden and receiving his Nobel diploma and medal. Nobel diplomas and the medals will be taken care of for the Nobel laureates, so they don't lose it during the banquet that is about to begin later this evening. And now Joachim Frank, born in Germany, and at the time of the announcement, he was associated with the Columbia University in the United States. Carol Saginaw, we saw there. And here is the third chemistry laureate, Richard Henderson, born in Scotland, associated with Cambridge in the United Kingdom. Now, time for another musical interlude by Johann Sebastian Bach. Soprano, Camilla Tilling. On trumpet, Joachim Agnas. Stockholm Philharmonic Orchestra. aria from Cantata number 51 by Johann Sebastian Bach was performed by the Stockholm Philharmonic Orchestra under the baton of Joana Carneiro, one of the world's most prominent young conductors, and soloists, soprano Camilla Tilling. And now time for
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel laureates, ladies and gentlemen.
the Medicine Prize.
Phileas Fogg, the main character in Jules Verne's acclaimed novel Around the World in 80 Days, could not have suffered from jet lag during his trip, despite crossing multiple time zones. His body had plenty of time, more than 3 days per time zone, to get adjusted to the time differences encountered along his journey. Today, in the era of jet travel, we can cross several time zones in only a few hours. But our bodies suffer as they struggle to adapt to the new time of our destination. Many of our foreign guests this evening are surely experiencing this now. Why can't our physiology adapt more rapidly? What keeps it behind? Our physiology is regulated by an internal clock that generates daily rhythms known as circadian, from the Latin circadian, meaning around 1 day. Circadian rhythms are ancient and exist in all forms of life. Life on Earth is adapted to the rotation of our planet, and the internal clock anticipates day-night cycles, helping organisms optimize their physiology and their behavior. Although the existence of the biological clock has been known for nearly a century, only recently have we begun to understand what is it made of and how it keeps ticking. Our story begins in 1729 when French astronomer Jean-Jacques de Marin took a mimosa plant, which leaves are open during the day but closed at night, and placed it in constant darkness. He observed that the leaves still open and close rhythmically at the appropriate time, suggesting an endogenous origin of the daily rhythm. Physiology is controlled by genes, and the biological clock is no exception. In 1971, Seymour Benzer and Ron Konopka isolated mutant flies that had alterations in their normal 24-hour cycle of activity. 15 years later, Jeffrey Hall and Michael Rosbach, working together at Brandeis University in Massachusetts, and Michael Young at Rockefeller University in New York, isolated that mutated gene called period. As instrumental as this was, however, the isolation of the period gene did not tell very much about the mechanism of the biological clock. It was a remarkable series of discoveries made during the 1990s by this year's Nobel laureates that finally elucidated how our biological clock ticks. The basic principle first proposed by Jeffrey Hall and Michael Rosbach is deceptively simple. The period gene produces a protein that accumulates in the cell, and after reaching a certain level, blocks the gene and hence its own production. As the protein levels subside, the gene becomes active again, and the cycle resumes. As many things in biology, however, the devil is in the details, as it was still unclear how the period protein can be stabilized long enough and then enter the cell nucleus to inhibit its own production. Michael Young discovered 2 additional genes. He named them timeless and double time, that partner with period and together contribute to the generation of robust oscillations of approximately 24 hours. The discomfort of jet lag is evidence of the strength of our biological clock, as it takes time for the machinery to readjust to the sudden change in environmental conditions. Although sunlight is scarce this time of year in Stockholm, the good news is that food is also a strong resetting stimulus. So the banquet that follows after the ceremony will surely help toward adjusting our internal clocks. The 2017 Nobel laureates have uncovered a mechanism controlling a truly fundamental process in physiology, how our cells and bodies keep time. Such timekeeping is essential for adaptation and has important implications for human health, not just jet lag, but also the incidence of chronic syndromes such as cancer, metabolic and sleep disorders, and several neurological conditions. Professors Hall, Rosbach, and Young, your brilliant studies have solved one of the great puzzles in physiology. Your discoveries have unraveled the cogs and wheels of the biological clock, an essential mechanism for the survival of life on our planet. On behalf of the Nobel Assembly at the Karolinska Institute, I wish to convey to you our warmest congratulations. May I now ask that you step forward to receive the Nobel Prize from the hands of His Majesty the King.
That was Professor Carlos Ibáñez, member of the Nobel Committee for Physiology or Medicine, speaking, holding the presentation speech of the Medicine Prize. First to receive it is Jeffrey Hall. Born in the United States, Professor Emeritus at the University of Maine. Michael Rosbach, also born in the United States, American, affiliated with the Brandeis University. You see his wife, Nadia Abovich, to the far most right here in blue. And finally, Michael Young. Who is affiliated with the Rockefeller University. Jeffrey Hall and Michael Rosbach, having worked together very tightly and also as friends, and Michael Young with his team, both teams racing to the same discovery, in competition with each other, now on the stage together, finally receiving this recognition together. Fine moment this day on the 10th of December for them and for medical science. Now, some more music.
Is
Liebesbriefchen by Eric Wolfgang Korngold and sung by soprano Camilla Tilling. And now it's time for this year's Literature Prize and a speech by Professor Sara Danius, who is the permanent secretary of the Swedish Academy that shows Kazuo Ishiguro as this year's laureate.
Eders Majestäter,
Your Majesties,
Kungliga Högheter,
Your Royal Highnesses,
Excellenser, mina damer och herrar.
ladies and gentlemen.
I en av Kazuo
Within a few pages
Ishiguros
of
böcker
one of
öppnar
his books,
huvudpersonen en
the main
present.
character receives a present.
Han är ung,
He's young,
bara en pojke.
merely a boy.
När han lossar på pappret
Unwrapping the
inser han
present,
att
he
presenten
finds several
är
sheets of
inslagen i
paper.
flera lager. Han avlägsnar ark efter ark.
He takes away
Till
paper
slut
after
packar
paper.
han upp ett
Has his friend
förstoringsglas.
played a joke on him? Finally unpacks an old leather case and hidden in it a magnifying
för
glass.
handlingen.
The magnifying glass
Bara
has
en
no
detalj.
bearing on the plot. It is simply a detail.
Men glaset
But even so,
saknar inte
It
mening.
carries mening. The
Scenen
scene
ger oss
provides
en
us
bild
with an
av
image for
Ishiguros
Kazuo Ishiguro's
enastående
outstanding art.
författarskap. När vi läser hans
Turning page
böcker,
after page,
när vi vänder
gripped by
blad
a
efter
desire to
blad,
discover what is
när vi
hidden
vill
between
veta
the
vad som
lines,
gömmer sig mellan raderna
and finally,
och när vi till slut
opening the
öppnar
case,
paketet, då sitter vi
we find
där
ourselves in
med
possession
ett
of
förstoringsglas.
a magnifying glass.
Det är Ishiguros
This is
gåva.
Ishiguro's gift
till
to the
oss.
reader, an
Ett
optical
optiskt
device
redskap
to help us human
som gör
beings
att vi
see
människor
ourselves,
får syn på oss själva
submerged as we
nedsänkta som
are
vi
in a
är
violent history
i en
without
våldsam
end.
historia utan slut. En berättelse av Ishiguro
To read Ishiguro
är som en
is to
blandning
enter a
mellan
stylistic
Jane Austen
world that
och
is gloriously
Kafka.
unpretentious.
Strängt taget borde
The
det
prose is
vara
controlled,
omöjligt.
restrained and exact, at
Men
times even
Ishiguro
dry.
visar att det går.
But then
Det går till och med
movement begins under the
utmärkt.
splendid clauses.
Och där i ligger en del av hans storhet.
And therein
Å ena
lies his
sidan det
greatness.
ordinära, det sociala livets regler,
On one hand, the ordinary social
tillvarons
life,
obönhörliga
rules.
ironier. Å
irony.
andra sidan
On the other hand,
lyhördheten för det absurda, som när Kafkas Gregor Samsa vaknar
The
upp en morgon och inser att han
capability
förvandlats till en insekt.
of indulging into the absurd, like Franz
Ishiguros
Kafka.
berättelser är som mentala
Ishiguro's
avklädningsnummer.
stories
Återstoden av dagen, som väl är den mest berömda romanen,
Remainder of the Day, which
inleds
is
som en
probably the
bok av
most
P.G.
famous
Wodehouse
story,
och berättar om en engelsk butler
tells the story
som
of
är
an
på
English
väg
butler
till en gammal bekant.
on his way to an old friend.
Innan vi vet ordet av
Before we
är
know
vi
it,
också
we
på
are
väg
sliding down into the abyss
rätt
of
ned
existence.
i existensens avgrund. Ishiguros värld är en tillvaro
The world of
utan
Ishiguro
hjältar.
is a world
Där
without
märks
heroes,
heller inga förövare och därför heller inga offer.
but also no perpetrators,
Författarskapet stiger
so
ur
neither any
1800-talstraditionen med
victims.
förnyare som Jane Austen,
His writing
Charles
comes out of the
Dickens,
realistic 19th
Charlotte
century
Bronte
tradition
och George
with
Eliot.
innovators such as Jane Austen, Charles
Det är nu
Dickens, Charlotte
romanen
Bronte
slår
and
upp
George Eliot.
fönstret mot den
This was when the
vanliga
novel
världen.
opened its window onto the quotidian world.
Ishiguro
Ishiguro,
är en
too, is an
förnyare också
innovator,
han.
always taking risks.
Han tar ständiga
With
risker.
every new book, he investigates a
varje
new
bok
genre mix, with
undersöker
elements
han
of the detective
en ny
story, science
genreblandning.
fiction, myth.
Romanens fönster
The
har
window
alltid
of the
varit stort.
novel has always been wide.
Ishiguro har gjort
Ishiguro
det ännu
has
större.
widened it even more.
Och 1900-talsmodernism.
What about
vad
early
hände med
20th
den?
century modernism? Did it
Ja, det
ever
vore
happen?
svårt
Did it
att
never
tänka
happen?
sig Ishiguro
It's hard to
utan
imagine
Kafka,
Ishiguro
men också
without
utan
Kafka,
Marcel
but also
Proust,
without Marcel
utan
Proust,
James
James
Joyce,
Joyce,
utan
Virginia Woolf, and others
och
who have
andra som
explored new literary
utforskat det
terrain,
mänskliga
in particular
medvetandet.
human consciousness.
Så kan man placera in Ishiguro
This is
på
where
den
to situate
litterära
Ishiguro on the
kartan.
literary map.
Samtidigt
And yet this is
är
only
allt det här
background.
bara bakgrund. För Ishiguros
Ishiguro's
berättande
writing
präglas
is
av
characterized
stark
by striking
integritet.
integrity.
Han tittar inte
His
åt
viewpoint
något
is
annat
his
håll
alone.
än sitt eget. Han gestaltar en
He writes
japansk
about
mor till
different
en
kinds of
dotter som
people.
begått
A Japanese
självmord efter
mother
andra
whose daughter committed
världskriget.
suicide in the
En
years after the
vårdare
Second
på en
World War.
science
A
fiction
male
anstalt.
pianist from
En
England
gammal
preparing
man
for
som
a
under
crucial
500-talet
recital.
ger sig ut på
A
en
female
färd
guardian at a
tillsammans med sin
terrifying
hustru
Hailsam boarding
och förflyttar
school.
sig genom ett arkaiskt landskap. Vad har då dessa
What do
berättelser
these stories have in
gemensamt?
common? The
Rottrådarna
reader
finns
must search
där.
for the root hairs,
Alla
but
böckerna
they
gestaltar
exist.
var och en på sitt sätt
All these books, each in its own way,
Förhållandet
inquire
mellan
into the
nuet och det
relationship
förflutna.
between present and past. We call this
Förhållandet mellan
relationship
nuet och det
memory.
förflutna. Detta förhållande kallar vi minne. Författare som Proust och
Writers such as
Wolff
Proust and
är
Wolff
ute efter att
attempt
bärga
to
det
salvage
förflutna.
the past.
Ishiguros
Ishiguro's purpose
syfte
is
är
different.
ett annat. Han vill
He
färdas
journeys
med sina
with his stories
berättelser
as
som om de vore
though they were
dykare
diving bells,
och
making
göra
discoveries in
fynd
the
i
mighty sea of
glömskans
amnesia.
Framförallt
Above all,
undersöker han i detalj
he explores in
hur
detail
vi
how we
umgås med
interact
det
with the
förflutna.
past and what
och
we,
vad vi,
as individuals,
enskilda
communities,
människor,
societies,
gemenskaper
also
samhällen,
must forget in order
också måste
to
glömma
survive at all.
för att alls kunna överleva. Dear Mr. Ishiguro, it is my great pleasure to convey to you the warm congratulations of the Swedish Academy and to ask you to receive from the hands of His Majesty the King the Nobel Prize for Literature.
British novelist Kazuo Ishiguro, born in Japan, in Nagasaki. He moved to England in the 1960s when he was 5 years old. As you heard, he is considered one of the most celebrated contemporary fiction authors in the English-speaking world, and now also a Nobel laureate, receiving 2017 year's prize. Wonderful applauses for Mr. Ishiguro. Well read by several of the other Nobel laureates this year. Congratulations! What a appropriate title of next musical interlude by Willem Pettersson Berger. Congratulations from Frös of Flowers by Swedish national romantic composer Wilhelm Pettersson Bergman, leading us up to the Sweden Central Bank's Prize in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel and the presentation speech by Professor Per Strömberg. Ladies and gentlemen, Majesties, Royal Highnesses. In the year 1726, something absolutely terrible happened at Strathonrig Castle in the southeast corner of Scotland. A 3-year-old boy was kidnapped by a group of drifters passing through the area. His parents sent out an alarm, and soon after a woman was spotted in the vicinity carrying a crying child. The boy was rescued and happily reunited with his family. If that rescue had not occurred, we might not be standing here today. The boy would not only grow up to become a professor in Glasgow and a member of the fabled Royal Society. Adam Smith, as the boy was called, is indeed known as one of the great thinkers of the Enlightenment, and is widely recognized as a founder of modern economics. Adam Smith wrote 2 important works. The Wealth of Nations, published in 1776, explains how markets create economic welfare and introduced the idea that an invisible hand guided firms whose owners were motivated solely by the self-interested pursuit of profit maximization to produce exactly those goods that households demand. His other great work, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, was published 17 years earlier. Here, Smith set out to explain the existence of morals and norms in society. He described human behavior as a struggle between our passions, focused on immediate satisfaction, and an impartial spectator, our long-term oriented and rational self. According to Smith, the struggle between these opposing internal forces makes us vacillate between stupidity and wisdom, impulsivity and responsibility, selfishness and concern for others. Morals and norms help our impartial spectator keep our passions in check and are necessary for a well-functioning society. These 2 monumental works provide 2 very different views of human behavior, and indeed the tension between them has been evident in economic research for the last 250 years. On one hand, we see that individuals act irrationally and myopically, leading many to make decisions that do not serve them well. On the other hand, market forces may diminish the role that these individual idiosyncrasies play in shaping economic outcomes. If rational, long-term agents outcompete the irrational and myopic ones, they force the latter either to adapt their behavior or to exit the market. When Thaler began his career as a researcher in the late 70s, the rational paradigm had recently made great advances and created frameworks that are still important for understanding markets, organizations, contracts and negotiations. As a doctoral student, however, Thaler observed that most people, including prominent economists, did not behave as the rational agents of economic theory. He started collecting anomalies. In a crucial moment, he realized that insights from cognitive psychology could be used to shed light on many such deviations from rational behavior. Time was ripe to derive new theories and hypotheses that were better grounded in human psychology. Thaler's planar-doer model for limited self-control builds on the conflict between our planning and impulsive selves and can, among other things, be used to analyze how to improve people's savings behavior. His research on social preferences shows how people's preferences for fairness can stop firms from raising prices and cause shortages in times of crisis. His theory of mental accounting describes how limited cognition makes us use simple rules of thumb when making financial decisions, leading to systematic patterns and biases. Outside of academia, Thaler's work has had a significant impact on real-world policymaking, not the least in the area of pension program design. His idea of nudging people to save more has helped to create literally billions of dollars of retirement wealth for ordinary people throughout the world. These programs are clear examples of how insights from behavioral economics can help individuals make better economic decisions.
Your work on the consequences of bounded rationality, limited self-control, and people's sense of fairness has brought insights from psychology, from the fringe of economics, to its very center. Your research has been crucial in building the new field of behavioral economics. It has informed public policy, unified social science, and finally liberated Adam Smith. It's an honor and a privilege to convey to you, on behalf of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, our warmest congratulations. I now ask you to receive your prize from His Majesty the King.
Richard Thaler, a portal figure within the field of behavioral economics, now receiving his Nobel Prize. One might say that the 2002 prize to Daniel Kahneman was the first of this fine recognition of how one successfully can bring psychology into economics. And now 2017, it's time for Mr. Thaler, who is taken by sentiments here. A strong moment for him, of course. The tears are not far away for Mr. Richard Thaler. And now we have the Swedish national anthem playing. Queen of Sheba's Festivity March from the Prodigal Son by Hugo Alfvén, composer Hugo Alfvén. which traditionally is played while the guests are leaving the auditorium. Beginning with Queen Sylvia, King Carl Gustaf, Crown Princess Victoria in blue with her Prince Daniel. The first ones to leave the Concert Hall of Stockholm. Heading towards the City Hall where the banquet is held, here's Prince Philip and his Princess Sofia and more members of the Swedish royal family sitting in front row here together with other prominent guests. Amongst others, the Prime Minister of Sweden and parts of the government and political parties, and representatives from the academic organizations that have been selecting this year's laureates. The chairman of the Nobel Foundation, Carl-Henrik Abin, is heading the congratulation tour by the Nobel laureates. Thank you very much for joining the 2017 Nobel Prize ceremony in the